Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council members, city officials, and our streaming audience. I'd like to welcome you to the December 20th special city council meeting tonight. We have 5 items on our agenda this evening. We are meeting here in chambers with health and safety restrictions for public attendance, and we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. I will make mention before we move forward on this meeting that this meeting is of a special purpose and is only for the 5 items that are on the agenda this evening. We are limited by a sunshine rule that we cannot discuss anything other than what this meeting is purposed for. So, and it says when a public body holds a special meeting to discuss particular issues, the statement of the meeting's purpose must specifically indicate those issues, and the public body may only discuss those specified issues at that meeting. So I just want to remind everybody that we are limited to our 5 items on the meeting tonight. Moving forward, if you would, Ms. Fleckner, please continue with the roll call of members.
Thank you, President Arnold. Phillips?
Here.
Payne? Nickerson? Here. Tapman?
Here.
Lewis?
Here.
Gillum?
Here.
Farrow?
Here.
Corcoran?
Here.
And Prohl.
Here.
And we have one member that's not with us this evening. Do I have a motion to excuse her by Ms. Nickerson, seconded by Mrs. Lewis? Roll call on that motion.
Phillips?
Yes.
Nickerson?
Yes.
Tapman?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Gillum?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Corcoran?
Yes.
And Prohl.
Yes.
And Ms. Payne is excused this evening. Since we only have the 5 items on the agenda, I'm just going to mention the committees of the 5 corresponding items. Human Resources is Mrs. Payne, which she's not here. I think Mr. Prohl was on that committee. Do you have anything to mention on what's on the agenda tonight?
Just the item number 2, which is its second reading, deals with pay raises and provisions for elected officials, and of course declaring an emergency. This piece of legislation will limit council members to receiving single pay insurance rather than family. It will increase the council's pay just enough so that they can now receive retirement once again. And it's going to go all 3 reads. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Prohl. And then well, you're still up. You have finance as well, so.
Finance has 1 item on tonight's agenda. It is a 3rd reading, and it is a resolution approving updates to the city's financial policies and procedures. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Prohl. Again, Safety Services, we have Ms. Gillum.
Thank you, President Arnold. Tonight we do have 1 item on the agenda. It's number 5. It's basically an extension of the Ohio opioid settlement agreement that Law Director Villarreal laid out for us. It is going to go on to a 2nd read tonight, and that does conclude my report.
All right, thank you very much. And we will move on to our city services, actually transit, which is Mrs. Lewis.
Thank you, President Arnold. Transit has 1 item on agenda tonight. It's number 4, which is the 2nd reading of an ordinance appropriating $200,000 for use toward the purchase of a trolley for the transit department. And this will go on to 3rd reading. That is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Mrs. Lewis. And the last but not least, Dave, you seem always to be at the end. Mr. Tapman for engineering.
Thank you, President Arnold. Number 3 is second reading, and it's the ODOT transportation resurfacing project on 772, and talks about our funds that we have to throw in, but I believe we can go to a third read without an issue on that one. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tapman. From there, we will move to reports from our officials. If you have anything to say, our mayor, Mr. Feeney.
Two quick things. I would like to thank everybody who helped pull off the Columbus Symphony's visit to Chiillicothe on Saturday. I don't think I'll ever forget that night. Neat experience. And I would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Feeney. And our auditor, Mrs. Spetnagel.
I have one item on the agenda tonight, and that's the resolution approving the city's financial policies and procedures. I presented those several weeks ago, so those will probably pass tonight since it's the third read. Wanted that to pass before the end of the year, so that way we could start fresh, starting a new year with new policies. Other than that, we presented the budget in a committee meeting prior to this meeting, and then I will be sending out details that will tie out to those numbers that were handed out tonight. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Spetnagel. And myself, I'd like to just mention that, of course, this is Christmas time. Everything's getting hectic, and people are busy as can be. The lights in the park, I think, look great, and also the lined up on Water Street. That's really added to festivities of the downtown. Having a business in the downtown area, I can tell you myself that seeing the remarkable turnaround and the bustle and everything that is going on in the downtown is booming, and it's wonderful. And I know that's an effort that's been done by a lot of people. And just say kudos to everybody that's really put forth the effort to put the downtown to where it's at. It's really doing great. This is great community. And I'll end with saying Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope you all have a wonderful one. Our special meeting does permit us to have audience participation, and unlike some limitations that are in review sessions and some other meetings. So we'll move on with audience participation. I'd like to reiterate that we are limited on the topics that we can discuss tonight to our 5 items on the agenda. Council Rule 21 does limit each speaker to 5 minutes, total limit of 15 minutes per any subject. I will silently indicate, or maybe not so silently, but I will indicate when you have about 1 minute remaining. That would hopefully give you ample time to be able to summarize your presentation. And anybody that does wish to speak, I will tell you that we do need your name and address for our records. Do I have anybody that would like to speak this evening? Yes, sir. Oh, push your microphone. Push that. Yeah, when it turns green, you're on. There you go. Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't feel, and a lot of people that I've talked to don't feel that it's appropriate to raise the pay for council members on an emergency basis. And I'm told that part of the thinking behind it is so that you can make insurance changes before the end of the year. And I understand that. And I like the idea, whoever came up with it, of limiting insurance options for council members, because I don't even know that insurance should be a part of the deal, quite honestly. Council's a part-time position. None of you do this as a career. I was asked to run for city council a few years back, and I made a joke. I said, if I ever did that, it would be to get rid of health insurance for council members. Ha ha ha. I think it's a good idea to do that, but I don't think it's a good idea to do it on an emergency basis in a lame duck session. That's point number one. I would ask that you guys stop calling that an emergency because it's not one. The second thing, item 4 for the trolley. Is this a declared emergency or not? I was told it was. It wasn't on last week's agenda. It's on this week's agenda. I don't see emergency here, and that's a good thing if that's the case. What's the status of that? I know we don't want to have discussion in this 5 minutes, so that's what I would ask as a response when I'm done. The last thing is related to point number 5. Well, we'll hold off on that. We'll leave it there. I appreciate any insights anybody has on the emergency part of it, and I'll listen.
I will give an update on the trolley. It was, there is no emergency on it. So that basically just means that if it's passed, there'll be a 30-day notice before any money can be spent. That's simply what all emergency verbiage means, is that if it gets passed, if it says emergency, then the money can be appropriated the next day. If not, there's a 30-day that public could appeal it. This is obviously something that doesn't need to be an emergency. So there's not. Things that need emergency are things like bills, grant, things that have deadlines. So when you see declaring an emergency, that's simply all it means.
Yeah.
I think that word sometimes gets confusing. In regards to it not being on the last agenda, initially, my fault. Totally my fault. I was in quarantine and I just didn't get them turned into time to Teresa. And so simply, I want to make sure, because we were going to have this special meeting that was coming up.
Yeah.
And she was gone the day that I tried to get into her. So we simply brought it to that last week's agenda, to the meeting last week, and just asked to get it added with the intention of just waiving the 3-day receipt rule. So then, of course, it'll be going through the 3 days so that it'll be potentially voted on by the end of the year by this certain council. Because once again, we're trying to wrap up as much stuff as we can for new council to have a clean slate. So there's just, a lot of people here have worked on a lot of the things that are going to be ending. So just to kind of give them a clean slate of what they'll work on next year.
So if you guys pass it and it does not include an emergency, what does that mean going into next year in terms of the purchase?
I just simply means there's 30 days until there's potentially a purchasing it. And I guess if the public want to appeal it, there's wording with that. And I'm not sure how that worked. Maybe, I don't know if Mayor has any input on that, but that could be a law director question as well, which I don't know if she's here. So,
okay. Let's go back to the pay issue then. What are the thoughts? What's the thinking on calling that one an emergency? Is it correct that it has to do with insurance and first of the year stuff? And if so, what makes that an emergency, and why wasn't it picked up prior to last week? If we knew we had a year-end deadline, why did we wait until December, a month after the elections, to say, hey, we need to raise pay and change the insurance rules for council members?